Hi, Sonia. Good evening.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Cameras on, please. Hi, Nandit.
Hi, Sonia.
No audio.
1 second. Let me fix this.
Hi, Upasna.
Hi, Sonia.
Is it better now?
Yeah, better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hi, Suramo. Hi, Angad. Hi, Priya. I thought we were getting late, but you guys are more late. Can you hear me properly, Nandit?
Loud and clear.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hi, Suramo. Excited?
Yes, absolutely. And I would like to mention something that one of my co-worker and she worked as an assistant director in my film
Mm-hmm.
and also worked as a cinematographer. So she's here as well
Oh,
today
wow.
in the session. Her name is like in the Zoom. Her name is Shutterbug.
Shutterbug. Okay.
Yeah,
What's her real name?
real name is Shostika. Shostika, if you
Hey,
want to.
Hi, Shustika.
hi.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Great. So we're gonna have a lot of conversations together. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming in.
sure, sure.
Hi, Angad.
Hey,
But
how
how
are
do you
you?
maintain that background consistently? Through all your sessions, you have this like one fixed, nice background. How do you do it?
Well, I'm on desktop right now, so that's why.
Super good. Awesome.
How
Okay,
are you doing?
good. Very excited. Nowadays, I
Same
wait for this time.
same here. How are you all, everyone?
Yes, good. What about you?
All good, all good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. So what we'll do is other people will keep joining. Let's honor the time. And so let us just start. Kritika, are you waiting for somebody specific or shall we just go on? We're running late otherwise.
We can start.
Huh, good. Okay. Okay, guys. So join me in welcoming Nandit. It's a very rare thing that Nandit shows up on anything online, on anything to do with public so much. But it's Nandit, thank you so much. It's our small little festival and you are a part of it means a lot.
Thank you for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. So people, I would do the honors of introducing a little bit about Nandit because being so humble, he wouldn't, you know. And the reason and the reason I would say this is because it's nice to know the kind of experience a person carries, because when we listen to them, you can ask so many questions because you can safely feel that okay, this person would know these kind of things, right? So it's purely from that point of view that one must know. So Nandit is a filmmaker. He's a phenomenal cinematographer and photographer. His photography and cinematography is, I mean, it's really class apart from the lighting point of view. Absolutely brilliant the way he renders light and just perceives how a shot should be lighted is absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure you all will look at it in a while. So no, and apart from that, he's a very diverse person. So he's a damn good drummer, absolutely fantastic. He plays tabla. He has keen interest in different forms of music and audio production as well. So it's not just something that like cinematography for him is not just being behind the camera and just shooting, but the entire gamut of communication. So whether it's a visual communication or auditory communication, everything he has a knack into it and a way into it. So I really invite you all to listen to the conversation and whatever he's sharing from all those dimensions as much as you can bring in right now. Don't just look at it this, okay, we're going to put a light somewhere and that shot is going to come in, because all our multisensorials come into action when we're trying to do something really nice, right? And that's how I know Nandit, that I mean, why it's unusual is because all his senses are so active and he looks at everything from all vibrations. That's why it's so beautiful. So ask your questions, fire him. The more you ask questions, the more I'll enjoy. Just test his knowledge today. All right, over to you, Nandit. Welcome to Malar once again.
Thank you, Sonia. You were too kind. It's indeed an honor to be doing this for Malhar, and thanks a lot to Sonia for giving me this opportunity to share my excitement for what I do, what I love doing. And fortunately, I get paid to do what I love, so it is like a win-win situation for me at the moment. Um, well, I think to start things, I would like this to be as interactive as possible. So I'll be asking you questions, and I would love to have your responses to my questions as and when I ask them. And I would also love it if you ask me questions, because I can just keep yapping for 90 minutes, and I'm not sure if at the end of it anyone will be none the wiser. So yeah, let this be as interactive as possible. And yeah, so I'll continue from
And
here.
anything,
Yeah.
anything from a language point of view, just in case for somebody, in the flow of things, just the choice of words, anything doesn't become clear, you want it in Hindi, you want it more slower, faster, please let us know, because I mean that's the bare minimum. No, we have to communicate in the way you understand it. So
Yeah,
please do
of
that.
course. I believe you're all South Asians here who understand both Hindi and English, right? Is there
Yes.
anyone who's not comfortable with
As
either
of now, as of
as of
now,
now?
yes.
All
Yeah.
right. Awesome. So the topic is that things that they don't teach you in film school, and I'm going to focus on lighting.
No, no, no. How can we just get to that straight?
Is it?
No, of course not. That's too serious. So first, I want to know about
Hmm.
your first project that you did way back in 2012.
Yeah.
It was a phenomenal project, but everybody doesn't get to do that as their first project. It was so unique. So do want to know about the uniqueness of that project, to know where you started from.
Yeah, sure. So my first project, I'm not sure if most people would know because they haven't read the profile. I'll also open the Flickr page where these pictures are, so I can share them as I speak. So my first project was a photo shoot with the well-known Odissi dancer Arushi Mudgal, and she at that point was working with the French percussionist Roland Auzet, and it was a production which was very unique at that point of time. It still is, and I have known Arushi for a very long time, since childhood. And she reached out to me, asked me if I'd be interested in doing a very impromptu, spontaneous kind of shoot at the Gandharva Mahavidyalaya where she lives. And I was at that point, I wasn't working professionally as a photographer, but I was probably 4 years into photography, 2 years as a hobby, and I was also studying photography at Amity when I was doing my undergrad. So I thought it's a very interesting opportunity for me to test my knowledge, test my skill, and see how I respond to what Arushi has to offer when she goes up on stage, when she presents the choreography to me. Roland was also in Delhi at that point, and he very graciously agreed to join the entire thing. And let me open the album actually, so it'll just give them a better idea of what I'm talking about. So I'm going to share the screen now, if that's all right. So these were as raw and as spontaneous and as organic as they get. I'll just scroll through the pictures. We didn't really plan on anything. Arushi kept presenting various aspects of choreography to me, And I also came up with my own thoughts that, okay, let's try it this way. And when we arrived at a common point, we agreed to photograph that moment. And some of the moments are moments where we didn't even stop. I just pressed the shutter, and that was a, and that was it. So it was very interesting in that regard. This, for example, happened very organically. We didn't stop to take this picture. Even this one. And it's even more interesting because I wasn't given a brief for this. Generally, when you work as a photographer or a cinematographer, you are given a brief from the client that हमको इस तरह की photos चाहिए. We need we need a certain kind of polish. We need this kind of lighting. We need this kind of composition. Nothing. It was a blank canvas. It was a blank canvas. Arushi did not know what to expect from me. I did not know what to expect from Arushi and Roland. And I think this is actually very close to my heart, because not just because this is my first professional project as a photographer, but I was quite surprised at myself for being able to come up with these images. Obviously, from a technical standpoint, they may not be brilliant, but that's because this is 10 years old. Like this album, these pictures are 10 years old. So at that time, I was still developing as a photographer. I still am. The learning never stops, obviously. But as you can see, these are extremely organic. There's a synergy between the two of us, even the three of us rather, because the moments that I'm able to capture are the moments that they're sharing on stage. And even this one, actually, we didn't stop for this. It just happened. I was alert and I took a picture of this.
Brilliant.
So Roland wanted a musical instrument because he's a percussionist. We didn't have any, but for some reason there was a tray, like a wooden tray, in the sound box next to the stage, and Arushi brought it, and we used it as a percussion instrument. It really adds to the the interestingness of this entire project.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
yeah, I'll stop sharing
Beautiful.
now.
Yeah, just really wanted to share. I've seen them, but really, like, I mean, just to look at it, it's very, very, of course, we know that how difficult it is to capture a live performance, and it is absolutely, I mean, what has come out, one can just say that, yeah, it's nice, but it could have gone in any direction. It's completely because the performers are not going to do the same thing again.
Yeah,
There are no
definitely.
retakes happening. There's so much. What do you control? You can't. You have nothing. What step are they going to take? The photographer has no idea. So where do you focus? What do you do is completely just something that happens. And of course there are some things that a person controls and does that, and that's what makes one different from another. So yeah,
Correct.
cheers to this. It's a very, very beautiful set of photographs, Nandit.
Thank you,
Okay.
Sonia. Yeah. If anyone has any questions at this point, please
Yeah,
feel free to ask. You can ask me about my approach or anything, or if everyone's interested, we can jump straight into the presentation that I've prepared. Um, so
I
give
guess let's
everyone a
ask the
moment. Yeah.
cinematographers if you want anything specific. I have many questions related to lighting. Sure. So do you want to like ask now, or do you want to put them up front, or you want to go as Nandit goes, or
You can
you
wait.
can wait?
All right. So that's great.
I
So
have a, question regarding this set of pictures,
yeah.
this album rather. So I wanted to know what light did you use? Like, did you use the natural light that were already there, or did you use some other artificial lights to kind of,
Okay. So we shot this inside an auditorium. It's
right,
in the basement of the Gandharva Mahavidyalaya, and this auditorium has a fully functioning stage,
right,
and it also has a fully functioning lighting rig. So
mm,
the stage lights that are available at every auditorium, so power lights, mostly tungsten. I think all of them were tungsten at that time. We were not into LED technology back then, so tungsten stage lights. That was it.
that was it,
Yeah,
right?
that was it. Very simple, very simple setup.
Right. Thank you.
Welcome. All right. Shall we move on then? I'll take that as a yes.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So,
Awesome.
so why do we light
Mm,
in the first place?
yeah. Okay, I'll come to that. Let me open my presentation first.
Mm.
I'm I don't do PowerPoint very often, so I'm struggling a little bit. Sorry.
Sorry.
Share screen, and yeah, there we go. Basics of lighting. To start things, this is from a film that I shot in London, December 2020. It was my graduation project at Met Film School, where I did my master's in cinematography from. And I'm really proud of this frame because everything with regards to composition, lighting, set, location, the characters, the expression, everything just clicked at that point. And there are moments as a cinematographer when things click after all the effort that you've put in. When things click, it just gives you a very satisfying sensation.
Yeah.
You feel very proud of what you've done. I wouldn't say achieved, because we don't achieve as cinematographers, we get things done. So you're very proud of what you do or what you've done, and it just gives you the motivation that you need to carry forward. Yeah. The next slide is about why do we light. So at this point, I'd like to ask everyone, why do you think we light? There are multiple reasons. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. There are multiple answers, but I'd like to hear from you. Why do we light? Feel free to jump in, anyone.
To create mood, scene.
To create mood, definitely, yes.
To get the essence of that scene and the mood, and character lighting can be done just because to show the character's thought process, maybe.
Characters, thought process. Brilliant. Yes. What else?
To light the face sometimes.
Yes, definitely to light the face, especially in from a Bollywood standpoint. Shakal dikhni chahiye. That's why we don't have contrasty lighting in Bollywood mostly. It's a joke. That's a joke. Anyway, what else? Someone is embossing the emotion. All right, fair enough. Solomon, feel free to speak up if you want. Anyway, so I'll just push through. So the reason why we light is to see. Obviously, I think that's the most important thing. We can't see when there's an absence of light, and that is detrimental to the very essence of cinematography, isn't it? So we light because we want to see, and then we come to other points which I think Angad mentioned, to create mood and atmosphere, to guide the audience to the point of interest, reflect the psychology of the characters. I think someone else mentioned it, or probably Angad did it himself. And we also light to depict the time of day. So it's not always that we get to film on location. We also shoot on set. So when you're shooting on set, it's again a blank canvas, and you have to use lighting to tell the audience which time of the day does the scene belong to. We also like to create texture and trigger emotions and sensory inputs. So it's very theoretical, and it's not like we light because we want to achieve just one of these aspects. All six of these points and more, I'm sure there are more points, all six of these work together. They work in tandem with each other to give the audience an experience which we can call cinematic. Yeah. So as a cinematographer, I'm not aiming to just create mood and atmosphere. When I'm creating mood and atmosphere, I'm also trying to reflect the psychology of the characters. I can't do high key lighting in a horror film and expect the audience to be afraid or tense or feel the tension. So while you're creating a very atmospheric, moody lighting design, you also have to light the face of the actor that reflects the emotions. And it also triggers that emotion into you as well, right? So, moving on, I have selected a few stills from various films just to give you an example of these points that I've mentioned here. To see. Everyone seen 1917? Raise your hands. Yeah. 1917, quite a lot of it is shot in daytime available light. Sir Roger Deakins at the peak of his powers. And it is really like as simple as it gets. We see because there's daylight. And when 1970s goes into the night scenes, we see only those bits where there's some light, some ambient light, or or there's a strong key light which is being given from a certain angle. So it's a very clear contrast between the presence and the absence of light, creating a different mood altogether. To create mood and atmosphere, this is from The Matrix Resurrections. I personally feel that the Matrix trilogy, I think the first three films have better cinematography than this one, but just for the sake of this point that I've made, it's a much better example. So this is definitely a very atmospheric frame, and it's something that you will see quite commonly in Hollywood films. A lot of haze, a lot of mist. There's warm light in the center of the frame, frame left as well. There's a cool cyan color temperature on the right, which really brings out the haze. And there are accents like these red accents from the traffic light, green accents from the sign. So it's definitely a very atmospheric setup. And going back to the first point, to see, the cinematographer made a conscious choice to not show Keanu Reeves's back because that's irrelevant. That's why we have a silhouette in this case and not a lot of light thrown into the back of the actor. Yeah? Is everyone with me so far? All right.
Yes, yes.
Yeah? Awesome. To guide the audience to the point of interest, Skyfall. I'm sure everyone has seen this. To think that a Bond film can be shot like this was unthinkable till the time Sam Mendes and Sir Roger Deakins did it. And no matter what anyone says, I think Skyfall is my favorite Bond film. Casino Royale comes a very close second, also shot by a very well-known DOP based in England. He's very senior, probably the contemporary of Roger Deakins, but this film is something else altogether. And I don't think I have to explain why I've chosen this frame, because obviously Sam Mendes and Roger Deakins wanted the audience to focus on the eyes of Daniel Craig, because it's a very tense moment. He's entered a tunnel, and I think he's chasing someone. And I think at that point he's also realized that one of the agents who was chasing the villain has also died. So he's very tense. He's very alert, and the and our focus immediately goes to the eyes of Daniel Craig because the way it's been lit. This is from a film that I shot. I took the liberty of including a frame from a film that I shot among all the top billing Hollywood films. So forgive me. This is actually from Tribute to Arthur, directed by a very dear colleague of mine, Usha Mittal Sharma. And I shot this in October 2020. Yeah, just after the first lockdown. And I think the light that I'd used, I think Suramit, you might be interested in this. The light that I used was a single LED panel, and that was it. Just one light. Yeah.
Yes, and I also loved how you um, did not light the eyes much because that reflected the psychology of the character, I guess.
Correct.
and
Very,
it's
very, very, very astutely observed.
yeah, it's amazing.
If anyone has seen the
Godfather.
Godfather,
Yeah,
the first Godfather,
yeah,
the opening scene is such that everything's lit from the top, so there's a lot of
exactly.
hard shadows just under the eyes,
Yeah.
and that's the look I was going for. Godfather is obviously a lot more atmospheric. It's a lot
Hmm.
more low key because of the set and the lighting as well. This is a bathroom which we did not have the freedom to paint as per our own requirements. So the light is obviously a bit more reflective in this case, but still, it does the trick, right? So at this point, the actor is feeling extremely pensive. Pensive is the word that I'd like to use, and the lack of detail underneath her eyes is what really helps bring out that emotion. That's psychology of the character. Gangs of Wasipur, extremely iconic film, and I also wanted to include this because till now, all other, all the other examples have been Caucasian skin. This is actually South Asian skin tone, and South Asian skin tones have to be lit slightly differently because of their um, because they're slightly darker. I mean, on an average, South Asian skin tone is about a tone and a half, 2 tones darker than Caucasian skin tone. That's why all these fairness creams claim to, enhance your skin tone by 2 tones. Do tone tak adhik gora banate hain. I think that's the joke here. But anyway, let's get back to, to lighting then. Create texture and trigger emotions and sensory inputs. I think it's a very rich image and it has a lot of texture, not just because of the way it's been lit, but also the set design which is there in this frame. There's a hearth pankha right here on the left. The pillow covers have a lot of texture. The light, obviously, the way it falls on Richa Chaddha's hair and the way it falls on Manoj Bajpayee's face creates a very, very striking contrast. That also creates texture. And obviously, the color just brings out the emotion that they're thinking something. I think the exact line which Manoj Bajpayee delivers here is that "Goli nahi marenge, keh ke lenge uski," and everything just works together to bring out that emotion. So when I was in the theater watching this film, watching this particular scene, the moment he delivers that line, I think the everyone was cheering in the auditorium, and that was like a goosebumps moment for me. Yeah. So when I said in the beginning of the presentation that all of these 6 points work together, they don't work as standalone aspects of lighting. So even in this one, there's a lot of texture which has been created through lighting. Even in this one, a lot of texture. Tribute to Arthur, not a lot of texture because it's we didn't have space or the freedom to design the set, but still it brings out the emotion and it also fulfills other aspects of lighting that I talked about. Right, so we shall move on to types of lights. As you can see from the still, this is from the first frame that I showed you. Types of lights are, there are various types of lights, but I'll cover for the sake of this workshop, this masterclass, only those lights which you will be using as cinematographers, whether you are a beginner or an intermediate or a senior DOP. First one is natural and available light, obviously. Free कमाल है, इसको जितना मर्जी यूज कर सकते हैं. No one is going to say anything to you. Doesn't cost anything. Tungsten lamps. I'm not sure if most of you have used actual tungsten lamps. Those, if anyone has studied film lighting or cinematography at a film school in the last 10 years, 10 to 15 years, they would be familiar with this term called baby, multi 10, multi 20. So these are tungsten lamps. Multi 10s are 1000 watt lamps, multi 20s are 2000 watt lamps. Babies are, I think, even slightly lower in wattage. So tungsten lamps are one of my favorites still, although now because of cost reasons and various other factors, we prefer to work on LEDs, which I've mentioned right at the end of it. Point number 3 is HMI. Everyone is familiar with HMI, the term HMI. Now, what I've written here is not something that anyone will ask you. So it's just for your reference. You don't have to memorize what HMI stands for. It's an acronym. Just call it an HMI. कहीं भी जाओगे, if you ask them HMI चाहिए, मिल जाएगा. If you go and ask them, आपको हाइड्रार्जिरम मीडियम आर्क आयोडाइड लाइट आपके पास है, वो लोग बोलेंगे क्या बात कर रहे हो सर, HMI बोलो ना आप. Then we also have fluorescent lights. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Natural and available light. Everyone seen The Revenant? Shot by cinematographer extraordinaire Emmanuel Lubetsky. If you've seen The Revenant, you should also see The Tree of Life. I think it's definitely worth watching. Also shot by the same DOP. He has a very distinct style. The way he uses natural light is exquisite. Also, the fact that light behaves differently in colder European countries does help, because in India, the moment it hits 8 a.m., 8:30, the sun is right on top of your head. And that's an undesirable light from a technical standpoint, also from a theoretical standpoint. We don't want light to be on top of our head, especially hard sunlight. In Europe, so when I was training in London, especially in winters, I step out of the home, like, and it's I think 1:30 or 2 in the afternoon, and the sun is right here, and I'm thinking that it's ridiculous that I can do a 3/4 backlight at 2 in the afternoon, which is unthinkable in India. So obviously, if you're shooting in those countries in that climate, you are definitely at an advantage. But you also know you should also be aware of how to use that light to your advantage. So this is a very detailed slide with a lot of text, but worth glossing over. The pros of using available light is that it's easily available, very, very cost effective. We often don't have to use additional lights to supplement daylight, because often we don't have the budget to do that, especially for cinematographers who are just starting out. We almost always don't have the budget to use additional lights, especially when we are shooting outdoors. And if you're shooting outdoors, these panel lights are definitely not going to help you. You need HMIs. You need in today's context, you could also use ARRI S60s, ARRI S120s as well. ARRI sky panels rather, not just S60s. So the fact that you are not using a very extended kit, that allows you a lot more time for coverage. And as an independent filmmaker, as an independent cinematographer, when you're working with a tight budget and a limited schedule, I think it's important that you get as much coverage as possible, because your editor will also bless you, and your director will also bless you, because he has options to play around with, right? So it's an indirect advantage of using available light. The cons are obviously that it's difficult to control natural light. In India especially, if you're shooting in natural light after 9:30, ideally we use skimmers and diffusers to control the hardness, the hard quality of the light. Shoot duration may also get reduced due to unfavorable light. Again, in India, your ideal shooting light is between, let's say, 6:45, when it's like I think sunrise happens a little earlier, but there is still some time after that when we see the sun come up. So 6:45 to 8:30 is your window to shoot if you want to get good light, the golden hour as we call it. And in the afternoon, I think 5 onwards till sunset, and even beyond sunset if you want to get the blue hour. So 7:30, 7:45 in the summers, That's your window. If you want to shoot in available light anywhere in between, you will have to make compromises, which is fine. Like, compromises can work. It's fine. It's not like filmmakers don't make compromises. Filmmaking compromises is one of the most important aspects of filmmaking. You have to find the best way of doing things with the limited resources and time that you have. Anyway, so the insights that we have from this is that use sun as a backlight, especially in India, when we are shooting in the preferred window of light. It's really useful to use the sun as a three-quarter backlight. We don't want hard sunlight to fall directly on the actor's face. Firstly, because it's uncomfortable, and if your actor is anywhere near as fussy as a Bollywood actor, which could be the case, then they might even refuse to shoot with you, and then you're in deep shit. So what do? You use sunlight as your backlight. Like I mentioned previously, you have to use diffusions, skimmers, flags. Flags are also called cutters in India. In England, we call them flags. And also nets. Nets, for some reason, aren't available in Delhi, at least. I haven't been able to use nets, but they're extremely useful. They are in the shape of cutters, but they are built with wire mesh. So imagine that you have an ND filter which you place in front of a camera. Your net is also like an ND filter, but it's made of wire mesh and not glass. And it really helps bring a very nice, rich gradient to the place where you want to control your light. It's worth looking into nets. If you can get nets anywhere in Delhi, I highly recommend using it. Not just in daylight, not just when you're shooting in available light, but also in studios as well, or in locations. Filtration. Well, at this point, if you are a beginner cinematographer, you wouldn't be using filtration a lot because your kit won't allow. We'll be using smaller cameras like Canon 5D Mark IVs, which I still use sometimes for various jobs. Sony A7S IIIs. We don't have a lot of scope to attach filters which require a certain kind of attachment. But if you do have the bandwidth and the resources to get that kind of attachment, filters like Black Promist and other halation filters, they really help mold the light in a more desirable fashion. They make it softer, not very soft, but they give a very pleasant glow, even in the hard sunlight that we get in India. So it's worth looking into. Again, use bounce boards. Bounce light is extremely underrated. And at this point, I would also like to tell you guys that the concept of bounce light was discovered, invented, and introduced by an Indian cinematographer who shot the first 7 films of Satyajit Ray. His name is Shubroto Mitra, or Subrata Mitra for Hindi-speaking people here. So bounce light is extremely underrated. So if you're using your sun as a backlight, then you will definitely need a key light, right? So if you bounce the light exactly in the opposite direction from where the sun is coming from, you get a key light. And if you bounce hard sunlight, you get a very soft, pleasant, pleasing key light. Definitely worth looking into. And negative fill is extremely underrated, which is unfortunately not used very much in India. Sorry. Negative fill is like if I'm standing in a location where there's light everywhere and I want to key from my left, but I also don't want a lot of light on this side of my face. What I do is I put up a 3 feet by 6 feet long flag or a cutter right here, as close as possible to my face. So the light getting reflected off any surface on this side of my face will be blocked. So I eventually get the contrast that I'm looking for. So instead of filling light, we cut light. And that's what negative fill is fundamentally. Everyone with me so far? I'm really not used
Yes,
to silence.
yes, yes.
So
Very interesting. Very
Yes.
interesting.
thank you. Any questions so far?
I have a question.
Please do. Yeah,
It's
go
a
ahead.
personal question. When you already have lights in a room, like the artificial lights, do
Mm.
you shut that off and use your own lights, or do you use that lights as well?
I would prefer to shut the lights off in a room when I'm filming, because those lights are just there because they've been installed there, and I haven't placed those lights by design. So if I've designed a lighting setup, if I want to create a mood using the lights that I am using,
Mhm.
then if I switch on like a straight tube light somewhere in the room, it just ruins the lighting that I've done, right? However, there is a way to use lights available inside a room. In many productions, especially British and American productions, you see a lot of lamps being used. For example, in bedrooms, living rooms, you see a lot of lamps. So these lamps are called practicals in our language, and practicals not only help break the monotony of the scene, but they also act as motivation to help us know where we should light from. So if I just quickly go back to the first frame of the presentation, we have a couple of practicals here, right? And if you see this gentleman in the middle and this girl here, I've used these practicals as motivated sources to light. So if you see the practical on the left, I have added like a soft hair light on the girl's head, and I've keyed from the left side of the gentleman's face, or frame right rather, because we have another practical here. So that's how we use lights which are available inside a room. Actually,
Okay.
very good question. I'm glad that you asked this, because it's something that generally people miss in such workshops. So tungsten Fresnel lamps and open face lamps. Very simple lamps, very easy to operate. Their color temperature is somewhere between 3000 to 3200 Kelvin, which we also call warm light, because it's a filament that is burning to give us that light. Fresnel is a lens that allows you to either flood the light or focus it to a spot. And most tungsten lamps that you will use, unless they're open face lamps, will have a Fresnel lens, and you can use them creatively. Tungsten lamps used to be industry standard for a very long time until newer technology came into existence, but they are still used quite extensively in studios because they are cheaper to rent, and they're easily available. Like every studio has tungsten lamps. Every rental house, uh, I mean, I'm not sure about Delhi, but every rental house in Mumbai has tungsten lamps of all sorts. If you ask them for tungsten lamps, they'll give it to you for very cheap rates, and you can save your budget in that aspect. And it's not just independent films. I was on a shoot. I wasn't DPing. There was a very senior DOP doing a commercial for Cadbury, and two of the lights that he was using were tungsten lamps, both 5,000 watts. So I asked him why he was using tungsten and not anything fancy. He said that because it's cheaper, and it was a low budget shoot, so it was cheaper to rent two 5,000 tungsten lamps along with other LED sources. Obviously, we work with mixed lights as well. Pros, they're cost effective, like I said, since they're no longer in high demand. It's pure economics. If anything is not in high demand, it is generally given for cheaper. It's a very warm, it offers a very pleasant color rendition and good for lighter skin tones. So that glow that you see in older films, even now in on Caucasian actors, that glow is because tungsten lamp reacts really well with lighter skin tones, and Caucasian skin as well. I have a few examples later, which I'll show you. It has a very high luminous output. They're very, very powerful lights. And in studios, they're extremely useful in creating daylights because you have large lights and they can be used to simulate daylight. So some lights take a little time to warm up. They take some, they take a few moments or maybe about a couple of minutes to reach full brightness. Tungsten lamps, they don't suffer from this problem, so you save a lot when it comes to time. And also one very desirable quality about tungsten lamps is that they are dimmable almost entirely. And when you begin to dim a tungsten lamp, they begin to get warmer. So if you have to probably simulate like a golden hour, you can definitely go for a 5K, like a 5,000 watt tungsten lamp, dim it a little bit, get that reddish golden light that you want, which you get during a sunset. And yeah, just go ahead with that. Cons, the reason why we switched to LED, not only in films, but in our own homes as well, is that LEDs are more energy efficient. And tungsten, because they burn the filament, they're extremely energy inefficient. They consume a lot of power. So if you are working on a budget or if you're shooting in a location where your landlord isn't very cooperative or where you want to save on energy bills, you cannot use tungsten. And because they have a lot of because they take a lot of power, you can't use multiple tungsten lamps in a domestic environment because our circuit boards aren't exactly designed for that kind of load. हमारे living room में, I think the maximum wattage we can go for is not more than 2000 watts. So if you have to light a living room in a location that does not have a circuit board built for that, the moment you start plugging in multiple tungsten sources, then your circuit board fails. So we can't use that. Tungsten lamps, because they burn filament, they get extremely hot, which can cause potentially cause health and safety hazards. The lamps are sensitive to oils which are released from our fingers, so we can't touch them. We have to be very careful if we have to change those lamps. They are therefore very, very delicate, fragile, and prone to failure. And dimming them also makes the color temperature warm, which is also a pro, which I mentioned. So point number 5 is not exactly a con. It can be used creatively if you want to use it. The one on top right is a 5,000 watt lamp with a, if you see that yellow knob here, that's a Fresnel lens adjuster. It's a 5,000 watt lamp that I've used on multiple occasions. And the one bottom right is called a redhead. The light itself is called a redhead because they come in red casings. And this particular lamp gives you a wattage of around 8,000 watts. It's a beautiful lamp, and while it's tungsten and while it's open phase, but the color, the luminous rendition of this light is surprisingly very, very soft. Obviously, it will provide you a hard beam, but when it hits the skin, it just provides a very, very soft, luminous quality. So it's worth using. HMIs. HMIs are fairly modern. I wouldn't say very, very modern, but fairly modern. They came after tungsten lamps. Their color temperature ranges from 5,500 Kelvin to 6,000 Kelvin. Does anyone know what color temperature the sunlight is? Any guesses? When we shoot in daylight, what color temperature do we set? Really? No one?
Their responses in the chat, Nandit.
Oh,
They're responding. Solomon is saying 5,300, Angad is saying 5,200, Anirudh is saying 5,600.
5,300. Okay, Sonia, so someone else is also asking some questions as well. I haven't seen them yet. In the scene when
Yeah. So
no,
yeah.
हाँ,
So
अच्छा
you
ठीक है
you finish that, and I'll read up that question.
ठीक है.
Hmm.
So 5600 is very very close. I think it's roughly 5600. So when we use HMIs, we generally use it with quarter color temperature orange to replicate sunlight. In India, sunlight is a bit warmer, so it has a lower color temperature. But in colder countries like England, for example, your color temperature of the sun is as close to white, like very very close to white. So light there is white, light in India is yellow. There's a faint level of difference between the two. These are versatile alternatives to tungsten and can be used almost exactly like tungsten lamps. These are from ARI's series of M series HMIs, M40, M90, M18, and ARI Sun on the right. I worked with M18 and M90s as well. Beautiful lights, and they can be used very, very creatively to supplement daylight if you're shooting outdoors. But then you also would need a generator to run these lights if you're shooting outdoors. So keep that in mind. Next slide. Pros and cons. So pros is that very high luminous output, daylight matched color temperature. The light does not flicker. Tungsten also does not flicker, but HMIs also do not flicker compared to lights like LEDs that may flicker when you're shooting at a certain frame rate. These are fairly more energy efficient than tungsten, not very much, but they are. And they're ideal for simulating daylight because of the color temperature that they have. Cons are that they are even heavier than tungsten and extremely cumbersome to use because not only the lamps that are very large, but they also come with a ballast, as you can see in this picture. So ballasts for smaller HMIs are like these big, like boxes. But if you're working with ARRI M90 and ARRI Sun, then the ballasts are roughly 3 feet by 2 feet and very, very heavy. So you need a lot of crew to handle that kind of lighting, handle that kind of ballast, and you also need a lot of power, which you often will not have the luxury of using. Takes time to reach full brightness. Yeah, so when I said the light does not take time to warm up, this light takes a lot of time to warm up, especially the larger HMIs. So they can take as much as 2 to 3 minutes to reach its full brightness. And if time is of the essence on set, then I will not recommend using these because the moment you switch them off and you have to switch them on, right after, it takes a while for the light to reach full brightness. And then you lose 3 minutes, which is a very comfortable time to do a take, 3 minutes. High power requirement, like I said, and these are significantly costlier than tungsten to rent. So bear that in mind if you ever use HMIs. Next slide. Fluorescent lights we've seen everywhere. I'm sure all of us have lived in houses that have a tube light. Tube lights are fluorescent lights, and these are extremely versatile lights, which have been in use in films for a long time, and they still are. They're extremely popular lights for low to mid-range budget films, and so in film, sorry, fluorescent lights can come in both daylight balanced color temperature and tungsten balanced color temperature as well. So if you want warm fluorescent lights, you can definitely get your hands on them. These lights are not very, very powerful, so they can be used in place of the tube lights if you're working on a set that has that kind of lighting fixture. Um, and they have to be placed very, very close to the subject if you want to use these lights as a key because they are not very, very, very powerful. Um, one of the pros, like I said, it's very, very versatile, low cost, long lasting, and energy efficient. I don't think I've ever been on a set or on a job where a like a fluorescent light has failed. I've been to sets where we have had multiple failures of tungsten lamps. Even an HMI had failed at one point, but fluorescent lights never ever given me any problem. It because they are fluorescent lights, they provide a very soft light, which is a very desirable quality of light, especially in a more contemporary context. As we move into contemporary cinematography, we don't see a lot of hard light being used because we have a lot of options to choose from when it comes to soft sources. And like I said, these are tungsten and daylight matched sources. Uh, One disadvantage is that these lamps run on a 50 hertz frequency. So if you're shooting slow motion, which requires a lot more light, or if you're shooting a different frame rate, for example, 30 or 50 FPS, 30 or 60 FPS rather, you will encounter a flicker, which is not desirable at all as a cinematographer. Their CRI, which is color rendition, I think color rendition index, which basically measures the accuracy with which it renders color. It isn't very accurate. So that is a huge con. If you use fluorescent lights, which are extremely cheap, inexpensive, then there are chances that it will not have an accurate color rendition. It also has the potential to emit a green tinge on especially a Caucasian skin. So it's not something that you want on your set. But there are ways to work around it. There are better alternatives available. So if you want to use fluorescent sources, I think a much better option is to use RGB tubes and use them in the exact same array that you can see. These lights are called Kino flows. The ones in the picture, these are called Kino flows. I have used them extensively. If I go back to this frame, if you see the top light right here, where my cursor is, that's a 4 feet, 4 bank Kino flow with with a full diffusion on top, and it provides a very soft, appealing light. So worth keeping that in mind. Luminous throw isn't very strong, so they are ideally suited for indoor usage only or in studios. LEDs, I'm sure everyone has used these lights. Aperture 300D, aperture 120D, 120X. So sorry, aperture 300X, Godox SL200, Amaran 300. I'm sure everyone in this room who has shot something has used these lights. If not these with the softboxes, we have definitely used the panel lights, and we've also used these RGB tubes that you can see in this picture. This is from a chroma shoot that I did not too long ago. The video is still under post production, so unfortunately I can't show you a lot from that. Okay. There are some yellow streaks on my screen for some reason. Not sure why that's happening.
Yeah, I know that just started popping up.
Yeah.
Did you by any chance pick up a color on the slide?
I'm not sure.
Because
No.
there are buttons available at the bottom left. I'm not, because should not happen by anybody else, but
Yeah, it's the color. You've touched something, and it just when you slide on the screen, it comes.
It's fine. I mean, it's not really
It's
affecting
fine.
it, is
It's
it?
no
Yeah.
problem.
Okay. Pros of LEDs. I'm a huge fan of LEDs because they're extremely versatile. You can use LEDs literally everywhere. And for independent cinematographers, independent filmmakers, LED lights are like a boon. They have democratized lighting, like DSLRs democratized filmmaking. Yeah. These are largely soft sources, unless you're using an open face Aperture 600D or something like that. These are extremely energy efficient. That's why we switch to LED lights in our residences. And that's also the reason why we use LEDs on set, because they're extremely energy efficient. They can also be powered through a battery, which really helps remove all the wires and the garbage that comes with it. Some LED lights are manufactured to produce the full spectrum of colors, RGB basically, and everything in between. There is a very low risk of getting electrocuted if you're using LED lights, especially with a battery. Which, if you're using tungsten, there is a high possibility of getting electrocuted if you're not using it properly. So LEDs for the win, yes. LEDs also do not explode. So there have been instances of tungsten lamps or HMI lamps exploding due to failure. Not that it causes any harm because there's a Fresnel in front of it, but still, it's worth keeping that in mind. The only problem with LEDs is that LEDs are extremely expensive. We haven't reached a point where LED technology is still inexpensive and accessible to all. Well, it is accessible to everyone, but it's not as inexpensive as we'd like it to be. If you have to use LED lamps, they'll cost you a lot more than tungsten or fluorescent for that matter. And most LED lamps, they have the lowest luminous intensity of all the lights that I've mentioned, even lower than fluorescent. So you have to either go for extremely powerful LEDs like Aperture 600D, because these panel lights that you see, some of them are powerful. Nan lights are quite powerful, but if you go with, let's say, like a Godox panel light or a Sonia panel light, it won't give you the brightness that you desire. So you might not reach the result that you're going for. Yeah. Any questions so far?
I'll just read out
Yeah.
one that came in earlier.
Please.
Yeah. So Solomon was asking that related to lighting up the scene, we have no such lights available or need to film at night without killing the dark.
I'm not sure what he means by that, but
He's saying he has no mic to communicate, so he has to
okay.
text. I have a question related to lighting up the scene. When we have no such lights available, I think that the kind of lights that you're showing, when you have no such lights available, or if we need to film at night without killing the dark. So it's
Without killing the
not like,
dark.
oh,
Okay, so I think this can be answered in two parts. If you don't have lights, then you can still work with something that you can get from the market. So you can still get LED bulbs from the market, and there are China lanterns, like these white China lanterns, which you can get extremely inexpensive, and you can make your own lights. You don't have to necessarily buy it from the market or rent it from a rental house. You can still make your own lights. I used to do that when I was just starting out, and they do work. If you're talking about shooting at night without killing the dark, well, if you're shooting at night, then you'll probably be shooting in the dark, obviously. But I suggest looking for areas that are fairly well lit. Like if you're shooting on the street, then look for street lights. I think that's one way to go about it. And try getting a camera that's very sensitive to light, or is very good at rendering pictures in low light, like a Sony A7S II or a Sony A7S III. So I hope that answers your question, Solomon.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So in case of filming a scene such as like for example, I'm taking a scene from Batman where uh, the atmosphere is grim and cloudy and overcast and there's so much less light. How in that cases, how do I like light those scenes and not like brighten up but make it very grim?
Okay, my
Like
first response
what kind
to
of what
hmm,
kind of lights do I need to use in that case?
My first response to you would be to look for real world examples, because the stage you are in, the stage I am in, like I'm by no means a very senior DOP, so I don't think I'll be shooting something like Batman Dark Knight Rises anytime soon.
Right.
But to answer your question for the sake of this masterclass, if you have to use lighting, I can't recommend any particular light because there are so many, and it's impossible for a DOP to keep track of what lights are available. Because for that, we rely on our gaffers and we rely on our rental houses to give us that information. But what you should be looking at is the quality of light. If you want something grim and dark, I suggest using soft light.
Right.
Use soft light. And it might be worth overlighting, not overexposing. It might be worth overlighting, like adding a lot more light, soft light mostly, and then bringing it down in your color grade. So it's not just lighting, but what kind of grade that you give it. That also really makes a difference.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I
Awesome.
guess the camera also and the lens I'm using also plays a pivotal role.
Cameras, well, it's very, it's a different topic altogether. Cameras determine the image only up to a point, but the fact that our images go through the grade each time we shoot something, that really eliminates the question of a camera up to a point.
Right.
Obviously, if I'm shooting on Arri Alexa, which I have on many occasions, like the first frame that you saw, that film was shot on the Alexa. Now Alexa has an image
Hmm.
which is known as the gold standard of cinematic image. If I shoot the same thing on red, I will get a different rendition, like a slightly differently rendered image. It'll be sharper. I think the contrast will be a lot more. So that's
Right.
there, but it's not something that cannot be controlled in the grade. So I don't want you to think about camera at this point. What I
Right.
want you to think about is where you'll place the camera and what kind of light that you'll use in terms of quality, not the brand of light that you'll be using. Is it
Hmm. Hmm.
you should ask questions like, do I want hard light? Do I want soft light? Do I want more contrast? Do I want less contrast? So if you're working with contrast, then you're working with fill levels. Do I want more ambient fill? Do I want less ambient fill? These are the questions you should be asking yourself. no
Right.
one no one in this group is at the level where we will be shooting something where the camera is going to make a lot of difference. Not at all. It's your eye and the questions that you ask that is going to make all the difference.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll move on then. So these are common lighting setups for a beginner cinematographer, and also something that even an intermediate or a senior cinematographer might have to do at some point. There's studio 3-point lighting, which is extremely elementary but extremely popular. 3-point lighting, everyone has done 3-point lighting at some point. We still do 3-point lighting. Green screen for chroma key. So green screen lighting is something that you will be doing as an intermediate cinematographer, because it takes a little experience, a little bit of experience and time to understand what kind of requirement green screen has for in terms of lighting, not just the character but also the screen. It requires a lot more light than we think it would, because we have to light both things separately, if that makes sense. A lot of us will be lighting interviews, testimonials, interviews, all of that is like bread and butter for a beginner and an intermediate cinematographer. We will not be shooting a lot of narrative. We'll be shooting a lot of documentaries where we'll be filming interviews and lighting interviews as well. Studio or location, daylit and night interiors. Um, Daylight is a bit more complicated, so I haven't touched upon that in the next few slides, but I will talk about night interiors. Um, Exterior, available light, which I talked about earlier, and documentaries as well. So we'll come to all of that. I'll quickly gloss over. So what I've done, I have mentioned all of these types of lighting in some detail and included stills from the films that I've shot. I felt it might be worth showing you guys real world examples instead of showing you stills from Hollywood films, which we won't be doing anytime soon. If that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. 3-point lighting is literally as simple as it gets. There's a key light, there's a fill light, and there's a backlight. Yeah. Anything you don't understand in key light? 3-point lighting. I mean, it's there in the picture. You can literally see the camera and the frame and the subject and the background and the lights. So I've chosen this picture for obvious reasons. There's the key light on frame right. Right diagonally opposite to the key light is our backlight. And on the left, there's a small LED box light, which I've used as fill. So if I go to the next slide, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm really sorry about these streaks here because sort of messing with the arrows that I've mentioned here. But if I go back to this one,
Nandit,
sorry?
do you see at the bottom of your screen there are these? Yeah, I think there must be an eraser there as much. Yeah, there.
I don't think I can erase.
Oh, the eraser is
The eraser is disabled for some reason. Anyway, let's just
sure.
power through. So on your right is the key light, which is the strongest source of light. Here, top left is the backlight, which creates separation between the background and the hair of the subject. And fill light, it's not that significant, but it's doing enough for us to see some level of detail on the right side of the person's face, our frame left. It's doing just enough to fill that side of the face. So you still have maintained contrast throughout, but there's some level of detail available for us. Any questions so far? I think that as a no. Okay, wait. I see some questions here. Anirudh had a question. Anirudh, please go ahead.
जी मैं ये पूछना चाह रहा था कि किसी भी फिल्म के लिए एक मूड कैसे तैयार किया जाए, कि मैं किसी स्क्रिप्ट को लिखा मैंने एंड देन जब उसे शूट करना है तो उसकी क्या लाइटिंग किस तरह की होगी, क्या फील होगा, ये कैसे डिसाइड करें. एंड सेकंड थिंग ये कि जब जैसे खुद से अगर डायरेक्शन करना है, हम अभी इस लेवल पे हैं कि हमें लाइट भी खुद से करना है, सिनेमेटोग्राफी भी खुद से करना है, डायरेक्ट भी खुद से करना है, तो कैसे चीजों को बैलेंस करें कि वो एक दूसरे को बचाया जा सके, इसके लिए आप क्या सलाह देना चाहोगे?
अच्छा, मैं सेकंड क्वेश्चन से शुरू करूँगा. मैं आपके पोजीशन में था, मैं रह चुका हूँ. मैंने भी ऐसे कुछ प्रोजेक्ट्स किए हैं, अब मतलब नॉट टू लॉन्ग अगो एज वेल, जहाँ पे मैंने डायरेक्ट भी किया है, शूट भी किया है, एडिट भी किया है. ये करना पड़ता है कभी कभी, ठीक है. तो ऐसे सिनेरियोज में थोड़ा प्लानिंग करना अच्छा रहता है. एक एक चीज़ को डिटेल में अगर हम लिख के रखें ना अपने पास, तो हमको पता होता है कि कहाँ पे हमको किस जगह क्या चीज़ चाहिए. और ये सिर्फ लाइटिंग के लिए नहीं है, हमको किस दिन क्या किट चाहिए, हमारा क्या शेड्यूल है, हमारे साथ अगर कोई कोई काम कर रहा है तो उसका नंबर होना चाहिए, उसकी क्या जिम्मेदारियां हैं, ये भी हम उसमें देख सकते हैं, लिख सकते हैं. तो हमको हमेशा हर बात का ट्रैक रखना पड़ेगा. और ये ट्रैक रखने के लिए वी हैव टू गेट इन टू द प्रैक्टिस ऑफ राइटिंग थिंग्स. मेरे पास एक छोटी सी डायरी है इतनी साइज़ की, जिसमें मैं हमेशा कुछ ना कुछ लाइटिंग प्लान्स और किट लिस्ट और सबके नंबर्स और क्या क्या मुझे शॉर्ट लिस्ट में मुझे शॉट लेने हैं, वो मैं सब लिख के रखता हूँ फॉर एवरी प्रोजेक्ट दैट आई डू, नॉट ओनली एज अ सिनेमेटोग्राफर बट ऑल्सो एज अ डायरेक्टर हु ऑल्सो शूट्स. तो मुझे इससे काफ़ी फ़ायदा होता है. और मैंने ये चीज़ करते करते सीखी है, ये पहली बार में नहीं आती है. सो अगर पहली बार में नहीं होता है, सो डोंट बी डिसहार्टेंड, इट जस्ट टेक्स अ लिटिल लॉन्गर बिकॉज इट्स अ स्टीप लर्निंग कर्व. ठीक है? So hope that answers your second question. The first question has a very obvious answer, Anirudh. आप कुछ लिखते हो या आप कुछ पढ़ते हो तो आपके दिमाग में एक खुद आप विजुलाइज करते हो कि नहीं?
बिल्कुल
करते हो ना? तो आपने स्क्रिप्ट पढ़ी, उसमें आप ये जानने की कोशिश करो कि इसमें क्या मूड है, स्क्रिप्ट में उस सीन में क्या मूड है, क्या इमोशंस हैं. अगर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है, अगर ड्रामा है, तो आप डेफिनेटली मूडी लो की लाइटिंग यूज़ करेंगे. ठीक है? अगर हमारा जो स्क्रिप्ट है वो किसी कमर्शियल के लिए है, तो हम कमर्शियल में मूडी लाइटिंग नहीं करते. हम थोड़ी हाई की लाइटिंग करते हैं जिसमें फिल लेवल ज़्यादा होते हैं. ठीक है? तो दिस इज़ ऑल अबाउट अवेयरनेस. वी हैव टू बी अवेयर ऑफ व्हाट द स्क्रिप्ट आस्क्स अस टू डू. इसके लिए ना, अगर हो सके तो रॉजर डीकिंस करके जो सिनेमाटोग्राफर हैं, उनके टॉक्स काफ़ी हैं. उनके वेबसाइट पे भी जाओ. ही हैज़ अमेजिंग इनपुट्स ऑन एवरीथिंग. बट एक बात वो हर बार कहते हैं कि मैं स्क्रिप्ट के मुताबिक लाइटिंग करता हूँ. मैं ये नहीं सोच के जाता कि आज मैं 2 पॉइंट लाइटिंग करूँगा या मैं आज मूडी लाइटिंग करूँगा. नहीं, वो स्क्रिप्ट जो डिमांड करती है मैं वो लाइट करूँगा. इसीलिए उनकी कोई भी फिल्म एक जैसी नहीं है. उसमें हर फिल्म में ही हैज़ हिज ओन यूनिकनेस. वो उनका स्टैम्प है. So you have to be aware of what the script requires you to do and what the director wants you to do. Wants to वो क्या स्टोरी बोलने की कोशिश कर रहा है डायरेक्टर. ठीक है? तो ये मेरा जवाब है इसके लिए. You're welcome. Solomon is also asking a question. I was surprised by one shot in a movie where the character was in a completely dark space, and yet we could see that one figure is there, some essence of her face without any spectrum of light. How can we achieve that? Well, I can't answer your question as accurately as you'd like me to, Solomon, because I don't know what scene you're referring to. But if you want to play with darkness, I suggest you start experimenting with backlight, only backlight, and very, very little fill levels. There's your key light becomes your backlight, and you are dealing with low fill levels. Obviously you can't have no fill because your camera has a noise floor, and if the sensor does not get enough light to raise above the noise floor, then you will get a lot of grains and noise in your footage, which you don't want. So I hope that answers your question. ठीक है, moving on. मैंने टंगस्टन लाइट्स की बात करी थी जो कॉकेशियन स्किन पे काफ़ी अच्छी लगती है. तो इसमें भी जो की लाइट है वो राइट से आ रही है. फिल लाइट, इसमें फिल लेवल्स थोड़े से ज़्यादा हैं. अच्छा अनिरुद्ध, ये भी ध्यान रखने वाली बात है दैट हम लोग क्या किस को लाइट कर रहे हैं. इफ़ इट्स अ मेल फेस, then we can get away with stronger contrast ratios. But agar if it's a female character that we are working with, or a female actor, we have to be a little more forgiving in terms of our fill levels. हमको थोड़ा सा और fill light देने की ज़रूरत होती है, because it is only natural for us to make them look a lot more flattering than male actors. I know it sounds very shallow, but it is how it is. So it's a very sensitive society we live in, so my words can be taken in the wrong context. But I just wanted to clarify. हाँ, इसमें जो key light थी, this was a 2000 watt tungsten Fresnel light, and as diffusion I used my bed sheet, which is an off-white translucent bed sheet, and which is what's giving it a very, very soft, pleasant, flattering quality of light. फिल लाइट में भी हमने फिल कैमरा लेफ्ट से नहीं दिया था, हमने कैमरा के एक्सिस से ही फिल दिया था. सो दैट्स वाई योर कॉन्ट्रास्ट रेशियोज आर स्टिल देयर और देयर अबाउट्स, बट ज़्यादा फिल अभी भी नहीं है इसमें. और बैकलाइट के लिए हमने एक 300 वॉट टंगस्टन लैम्प विथ फ्रेनेल यूज़ किया था, which is giving a very sharp hair light, which is quite effective in, I think. और हमने थोड़ा बैकग्राउंड भी लाइट किया था, जो मैंने आपको नॉइस फ्लोर के बारे में बताया. बिकॉज द बैकग्राउंड इज़ डार्क, वी want to throw some fill light or throw some light on the background, जिससे हमारे बैकग्राउंड में वो नॉइज़ ना आए. ठीक है? This is something I shot last week. I did a workshop on lighting for Bennett University students, film and television students. इसमें भी This is again 3-point lighting. इसमें की लाइट है, एक बैक लाइट है, और इसमें फिल के जगह बैकग्राउंड लाइट है. इसमें मैंने बैकग्राउंड को थोड़ा सा लाइट किया है क्योंकि मुझे सेपरेशन बैकग्राउंड से चाहिए था, नॉट नेसेसरीली द बैक लाइट. और इसमें मुझको फिल की ज़रूरत नहीं थी बिकॉज जो स्क्रिप्ट थी, दिस वाज लाइक अ मोनोलॉग. इसमें वो अमृता प्रीतम की एक कविता पढ़ रही हैं, तो मुझे लगा कि लेट्स गो फॉर समथिंग विच इज़ पेंटली हैज़ अ सॉफ्ट ग्लो टू इट. और इसमें भी मैंने बहुत ही सिंपल लाइट्स यूज़ करी हैं. की लाइट एंड बैकग्राउंड लाइट are both these 1 by 1 LED panel lights. That's it. Panel light से ये मैंने achieve किया है इसमें. और backlight is using an aperture 300 daylight balanced, which is a hard source, and it's doing the job right here. इसका हमने एक अलग profile भी लिया था. इसमें भी we had to adjust the position of the light. Same setup, background, key light and backlight. That's it. किसी को कुछ सवाल पूछना है इसमें? अच्छा, ठीक है, let's move forward. Green screen and chroma key. So green screen में green screen को अलग से light करना पड़ता है, and it has to be as even as possible. And your subjects have to be lit separately. You can't use the same key light for your subject and the green screen, otherwise it won't work. Your green screen won't be very clean. The keying that you do will not be very clean. So it'll cause problems in post. You'll have to deal with rotoscopy, and your editor will kill you for that. So I'm sure everyone knows green screen is keyed out in post and replaced with a plate. A plate is a shot that we shoot in advance, keeping in mind the scene that we are shooting. It could also be a picture. It could be anything else. Subjects are lit using fundamental principles of lighting. तो किसी भी subject में, किसी भी scenario में, we never stray away from the fundamental principles of lighting. वो कहीं ना कहीं तो key और fill और backlight कहीं ना कहीं आएगा. हम लोग हो सकता है किसी चीज़ में fill यूज़ ना करें, जैसे मैंने इसमें fill यूज़ नहीं किया है, and it works. So it's still following the fundamental principles, but I've broken away from the aspect of fill light, just because it was a creative decision and it did not require a fill light, to be honest. ठीक है. Now green screen की जो lighting होती है, and green screen itself is used both for narrative and broadcast applications. तो ये मैंने जो आपको पहले दिखाया था, इसमें भी if you can see, I'll switch to this one. Green screen is flat, completely flat and even. तो इसको जो replace करेगा, he'll thank me for keeping it very clean and flat. और बाकी जो हम lighting कर रहे हैं, जो अलग से key light और fill light दे रहे हैं, उससे subject पे जो होना है, that's happening. ठीक है, हमने थोड़ा सा color contrast भी create करने की कोशिश करी है using RGB tubes. One is blue, one is violet, and you can see a little bit on his shoulders and arms and his cap as well. This is something I shot for a narrative. If you remember Tribute to Arthur, that girl जो bathroom में खड़ी है, that film. So it starts with a newsreader reading the news. ये भी हमने green screen में shoot किया था, and I used a lot of tungsten lamps in this one, supplemented with panel lights as well. ये इसका replacement करके ऐसे था. This is the end result. Interview lighting, studio and location. Interview lighting is something that I still do a lot and I enjoy it. And I don't think interview lighting is something that you will be able to get away with even when you're senior. कभी ना कभी करना पड़ेगा. And it's not below anyone to do interview lighting. You can get as creative as possible, or you can be as bland as possible, depending on what the script requires you to do. इसमें भी single source key है यहाँ से. There's this massive aperture 300D with a softbox, dome softbox, and on the other side for fill, I've not used a light. For fill, I've used just a bounce board. So ये जो 3-point lighting होती है ना, lights, it's 3-point lighting. So your fill does not have to be a light. It could be a source. It could be a bounce board as well. Or it could be any form of reflector. It could be a mirror as well if you want. As long as it's fulfilling the role and responsibility of a light, your bounce board is actually a light when it's being used as a reflector. और हल्का सा किक के लिए मैंने एक RGB ट्यूब थोड़े से पीछे रखी है, just behind the axis of the bounce board. This is your output, final output. It's very, very corporate. It's boring. It's very, very corporate, very straightforward. Soft key light, little bit of fill, backlight, and a little bit of light on the background as well. Nothing spectacular, but ऐसे काम भी करने पड़ेंगे. As a cinematographer, it's not like you'll be doing something creative and exciting each day. You just have to go with the flow and take whatever comes your way, which includes dull and boring jobs like these. This is a bit more interesting. This is from a film that I shot, I think last month. This is still under post-production. This was like a vox pop or a piece to camera. So we had many people come in front of a camera and express their opinions on a certain subject. So isme bhi, again, I'm following the fundamental principles of light. There's a key light, there's a backlight, which is slightly warmer than the key light, if you can notice. There's a kick right here. If you notice on the left side of a face, on a cheek, there's a kick. Now that kick isn't exactly a light. It's light bouncing off the background. Okay, so this is what we call a happy accident in cinematography. And yeah, we have a background light, which is resulting in a kick, as you can see. There are questions I see. Fill light on chroma. How much to light the chroma? Solomon, how much to light the chroma? So that is a little subjective, but I would say that you have to light the chroma almost as much as your subject. It can't be too dark, and it can't be too bright. You have to maintain correct exposure levels on the green screen so that your screen is visible and there's even light on it throughout. There can't be any gradations or gradients on it. It has to be flat all throughout. So I hope that answers your question. This is from a corporate documentary I did for BSES Rajdhani. And while it does not look very lit, but it is lit, this was lit using 2 panel lights. One was exactly on the right side of this gentleman's face, and one was just off the axis of the camera, which was acting as a second soft source of key, which was basically acting as a fill light. We also have a background light, but that light is basically that these 2 panel lights bouncing off the white walls and giving us an ambient fill overall. And a background के लिए अलग से कोई light use नहीं करी है. Remember this, that if you are in a room with white walls, there's going to be a lot of bounce. आप जो भी light करो वो bounce होगी उस दीवार से, and it'll be easier for you to get ambient fill. If you're working on something that requires to be low key, then you're screwed because you can't control all that bounce. But if you're working on something that requires a high key setup, then white walls are definitely the way to go. And तो इसमें जो fill दिखा रहा हूँ ना मैं, so even that fill is also coming off the white wall that's on this gentleman's left. So very, very simple setup, 2 panel lights, and that's it. That's all you need in such a scenario. Isme bhi, I've used 2 panel lights. So one is pointing at the wall, which is giving background some illumination. If you look at the plants, you can see the shadows, and you can see that it's lit. So ये ambient light नहीं है. The key light was actually motivated by a door that was in front of this gentleman right here. So उसे थोड़ा सा ambient की spill कर रहा था अंदर, which I supplemented using a panel light. So that's about it. Extremely simple setup, 2 panel lights, and that's done. It's a perfectly usable, well-lit shot. This is even more interesting. I have not used light in this. मैंने कोई LED कुछ use नहीं किया इसमें. I placed this gentleman in front of a window, opened the curtains, let the soft diffuse daylight come in, and I switched on the ceiling lamps in the room. So you get a key and a background light naturally, and you also get color contrast because your key light is white and your background light is tungsten yellow. So this is something you can also do if you don't have the budget for lights. You can use available light. I think someone asked me if we can use lights in a room. I'm not able to remember who asked me. Not sure if she is here, but so to answer your question, you can use lights if you are in a situation like this, where it allows for that opportunity. This is even more interesting. This has zero lighting. Soft diffuse light, that's it. कुछ नहीं किया मैंने इसमें. I just positioned this lady according to the direction of the soft source, soft light, soft ambient light, which was filtering through the window, and just shot the interview. That's all. So you don't always have to have lights. If you don't have a budget, you don't always have to have lights. Just know where the light is coming from, know your sources, and place your actors or talents accordingly, and you'll be good to go. This is studio and location interiors. This was actually a panel discussion between 3 people. And isme I had the budget and the freedom to light as per my own requirements. So what we did in this one, we used an Aperture 300D with a softbox dome as our master key light, which was right on top of the actors. So it also helped fill up the room a little bit. And if you see this area, this portion on the gentleman's left, and this area, ये जो area है, I placed a couple of panel lights in XY axis like this. So what it's doing, this one is throwing light on this side of this person's face, and the panel light, this one is throwing light on this lady's face, creating almost like a rim of light. That's that. On the left, if I move to the next frame, there's this hard tungsten source, which I've used as an accent light. So it just breaks away the monotony of the frame. It just gives it like a warm accent. Since we are mostly dealing with white light, this looks interesting and just makes the frame look a little livelier. और वो जो panel light हमने ऊपर rig किए थे, that's also lighting the left side of this gentleman's face. So we get a little bit of contrast on this side of his face. So again, fairly simple lighting, a little complicated in terms of rigging, but the setup itself isn't very, very difficult to achieve. This is something I shot in a studio in London. Now, I talked about practicals, right? So we have a practical here. I also have a master key light on top, which is a Panora, like a tungsten softbox, rigged above. And I also have like a soft dome, which is just not very high in intensity, but it's also providing a little bit of soft fill on this lady's face, and that very, very subtle and tiny glint in her eyes. And the reason why I've lit from the right side of this lady is because I have this practical here. So it's source motivated. I'm not necessarily keying from frame right because there's no light over there. So there's no motivation to light from that spot. Okay, moving on. Where's the cursor? Yeah, there we go. This you've seen already. I did talk about it. There's a practical. There's that 4 feet Kino flow, which is lighting up the actors as well as the room. There's a source motivated key light, which was a panel light placed 45 degrees off the axis of this actor. And there's a very subtle backlight. Like it's almost invisible, but it's doing enough to separate the background from this person's head. I hope everyone can see clearly. This is something you should be watching on a laptop and not on a mobile, if anyone's watching on a mobile. This is again one of my favorite shots from Tribute to Arthur. I think I went a little overboard with it because I was very eager to use moonlight as a backlight / key light. So for the moonlight, hello?
Sweet.
I think someone has a question. Hello?
No, no, carry on. I
Yeah?
think
Okay.
somebody accidentally switched
Okay,
off.
no worries. So for the backlight, which was simulated moonlight, I used a 3000 watt tungsten Fresnel with, I think, double color temperature blue gelatin paper to give it that blue hue. And I pointed it directly on the bed so that you have a little spill of light here. For the room, I used a panel light left of my camera to give it some fill, ambient fill. There was a practical on frame right, which is off screen at the moment, but that also acted as source motivation for me to add like a really nice soft warm light. So that soft warm light was achieved by using a panel light bounced off the white wall that you can see. Yeah, so bounce light coming to the rescue again, once again. I think I did talk about this key light, this one key light with a soft diffusion paper. This is something I shot last week. This is again extremely straightforward. I had uh, 3 lights at my disposal for this shot. Obviously, I had asked for more lights, and I had those lights at my disposal. But for this one, I used 3 lights. So there was an aperture Nova 300, which I had bounced off the ceiling. So the fact that it was bounced off the ceiling, it gave a very soft, flattering fall off on the faces of these actors, which I think I supplemented a little bit with another LED panel light. So you have soft light on the left side of everyone's face, and there's a soft gradation going towards shadows on your frame left. And as a backlight, I placed a Godox 30, Godox S30, Godox S30 between the two of these people, this lady and this gentleman here. So it did the job of a backlight for both this lady and this gentleman. And there's a very slight spill on this person's head as well. Yeah. So again, I'm still following the fundamentals of lighting. I'm still using key light and backlight, and I'm also using bounce light. So I'm not deviating from that very much. It's all there in my head. All I need to do is to take decisions where I want fill light, where I want my key light to come from, and how much fill levels am I working with, and where do I want my backlight, and what's the intensity of that backlight. Exterior, available light. I shot this around sunset, which is why you can see that golden glow. So it's mostly backlit. very, very self-explanatory. There's nothing much to talk about in this frame. Available light where we don't have a hard source. So it was overcast that day, and it worked in my favor because this is the shot where we were surrounded by trees. So if we had hard light seeping through the tree, then we would have had shadows in awkward places, which was not the case. So I think I got lucky and I got a very soft, even light all across the frame. And the rest of it was handled later on post when I was color grading the fill. This is like a commercial I shot for BMW. They wanted this to be very, very gritty, very raw, very organic. So we did not use any lights for this. They were shot in absolute available light. And London has the tendency of giving you a very overcast sky more often than not, which worked in our favor, at least in this case. It's very, very soft and extremely flattering. Gives you almost gives you a sense of nostalgia if you look at this frame. This as well. The only disadvantage we had in this case for not using lights is that we don't have enough light falling on the actor's face, but that's the trade-off when you're going for something very gritty and where you don't have a lot of resources at your disposal. This is London again. So I was taking a few shots from my camera, and while going down the escalator to catch the metro, and यहाँ पे obviously कोई मेरे पास scope नहीं था lighting करने का. This is like almost like a vlogger. I'm holding a camera, standing on the right of the escalator and taking a shot all the way down to the point where the escalator ends. Now, the only reason why this looks interesting is because I color graded this frame to resemble a shot from The Matrix. If anyone has seen The Matrix, you will immediately identify this color scheme. Documentary. Isme bhi no lights used. There was a window, and I asked the gentleman to sit here. The lighting was not as diffused as it looks here, but I was able to achieve that in the grade. So whoever is paying attention, whoever wants to enhance their skills as a cinematographer, it's definitely worth learning how to color grade, because that really goes a long way in enhancing your image. You can obviously light the best way possible, but if you don't grade it properly, then it's not going to give you the result that you want. Again, in documentaries, you'll be using a lot of ambient light interviews, क्योंकि time नहीं होता है इनके पास. This is not a frame that I'm proud of, but I was in a lot of hurry, and my skill levels were not as advanced as they are now. So it wasn't a very good decision to make him sit exactly opposite to a window, because it's sort of giving a very strong backlight. But again, color grading to the rescue, you can salvage the footage and it is perfectly usable, as you can see. This may be what I did was place this gentleman in a way so that half of his face was getting hit by a very strong but soft diffused ambient light, and the wall on this gentleman's left was doing the job of a fill. So it's not very contrasty, but there is some degree of difference between this side of his face and this side, just because the way I made him sit. Because I was also aware of the light, is what I'm trying to say. All right, that brings us to the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free. And I think we have a few questions from Solomon as well. Sonia, please let me know what are those questions.
Yeah. So I
Stop
think
sharing.
from last, what we did was how much, okay. How to eliminate the reflection falling on the screen. This is in connection to the chroma conversation.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's how to eliminate the reflection falling on the skin if we have no room of much distance between subject and chroma.
It's a good question, actually. I think the first response would be to choose a room where you have ample depth. And I think if you use tungsten color on chroma, that really makes a difference. Because I've shot with both LEDs, like white LEDs and yellow LEDs. I think yellow LEDs have a softer fall off and they won't reflect as much. Also, it might be worth choosing a green screen which has a matte finish, because some green screens have a reflective surface which is not ideal. So go for a paper background, don't go for paint, don't go for cloth or any fabric. I think paper is the best bet. Paper is the best option that you've got.
Got it. And as a beginner, which light should I buy considering my taste is to shoot for dark or night?
As a beginner, which light I should buy? I wish I could answer that question. I don't own any lights myself.
So you
And
don't need to buy.
yeah, you don't need to buy. If you want, you can just rent it from any rental house. The fact that you like to shoot a certain way, I think if you choose certain lights, then your shooting style might get limited by the choice of lights available to you. So don't let that be a factor. Just go to a rental house, see what kind of lights they have, and decide as per the script that you are writing or shooting.
Yeah. I think Gabriello is asking how to use street light at night. How to use street lights at night is factable. Oh, is
Okay.
it? Do you mean that is? Oh, do you mean is it practical? Are you saying that is street light using for the night shot is practical?
I think you can use it. If you if you shoot a little low angle, like if this is eye level, if you go below and point the camera up, then you can also see the street lamps. And what that does is that it offers you a very interesting flare if you're going for that. It also the fact that you're seeing the street lamp works as a source motivated lighting technique. If that makes any sense. I can't think of any examples where such a technique was used, but if you look at I think quite a few Bengali independent Bengali films which were shot.
Pre-independence films.
नहीं, pre-independence का तो नहीं पता because I don't know what technique they use, but I'm talking about shot between 2005 to 2015. I think that period of films, because I've seen some Bengali films from that period, low budget independent cinema, and they have used street lights, like only street lights, and they have done a good job of it.
Yeah, no, I meant that I also can't remember which film was that, but remember they were depicting the pre-independence era,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
they just like like the meeting happening right under the light, the street light. One person writing the novel very beautifully. It was just
Sure.
one street light. I can't remember the film. Okay, great, perfect. You have covered I think 3 years of course in an hour.
Do we have time? I have a question.
Yeah, sure. We have another 10 minutes, so feel free to ask questions.
Oh, okay. So this is a situation I'm asking you, Nandit.
Yep. I think we've lost you, Pasna. Hello?
Should
Pasna, why don't you switch off your video and just
switch off
come
your
on
video and talk.
Yeah. And you go in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Now we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Loud and clear.
Okay, so I'll give you a situation. So sorry, I'm in a hotel, so the internet is in the room is different, and outside is different. So it's a situation where you're shooting a documentary.
Yeah.
You go.
Upasana, I think it might be
I'll
worth.
write it down.
typing your question
Yeah, yeah.
because your
Just
voice
type
is
it down.
getting.
We'll read
Yeah.
it out. Okay, by the time Upasna
Okay.
types in, anybody else? Any
Yes, I
question?
have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Angad.
Okay, so my forte is into direction, and recently I've shot a film, a corporate film. So if you allow me to share a screen, can I share that frame with you?
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
share it.
please do.
Okay. Let's just-
Do you have the access with you, Angad?
I don't think so. No, I don't have Nexus.
Yeah, well, the studio will give you just 2 minutes.
So मेरा क्वेश्चन अनिरुद्ध से सिमिलर ही है. So what is happening is मैं तब तक explain कर देता हूँ आपको कि हम लोग like what I storyboard हम लोग कर लेते हैं, everything is prepared, scheduling हो जाता है, सब कुछ रहता है. But when we go on set, so I asked my DOP to lit it in a proper way. It's a morning sequence where a wife is sitting on a dining table and husband comes in and talking to a mother
Yeah.
over a video call. So I just like to share that frame with you. I think Abhi, how will I do that?
You have the access now.
Okay.
Just share screen.
Okay. This is it. That was it.
Upasna, I will answer your question after this one. I hope that's fine.
Multiple. One participant can share at a time. So उसमें हम लोग जो है LED lights SL200 and SL60 यूज कर रहे थे. I think I don't know how to share this. ये थोड़ा options आ रहे हैं इसके अंदर. I'm not a tech savvy, so I don't know how will I do that. So जो DOP ने जो lit किया है, I am not satisfied with that frame, with the lighting. और बट मेरे पास टाइम की बहुत ज्यादा कमी थी, तो हम ज्यादा एक्सपेरिमेंट नहीं कर सकते थे उसके अंदर कि लाइक क्या करना है एंड ऑल दैट. इट्स अ मॉर्निंग सीक्वेंस एंड आई रियली वांटेड कि लगे कि लाइक सनलाइट कमिंग इन through a source, through a window or through a door or somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's a side light which actually filling the side of the character and the husband's back. So the frame is like शॉट ऐसा है कि हमारा डाइनिंग टेबल है, सेंटरी फ्रेम्ड है, वाइफ इज सिटिंग ऑन अ सेंटर एंड हस्बैंड इज कमिंग ऑन फ्रॉम द लेफ्ट ऑफ द फ्रेम एंड वो आकर के राइट साइड डाइनिंग टेबल पे आकर के खड़ा होता है एंड टॉकिंग टू अ मदर. एंड हमारा जो शॉट है, जो लिट लाइटिंग है, कैमरा इज राइट हियर एंड हमने बैक कैमरा के बैक से हमने की लाइट दिया हुआ है जस्ट टू गिव a morning sequence, and we have a window or a door in the background जहाँ पे हल्का सा वो tinted है, yellowish tinted है वो.
I'm suddenly very confused, Angad, because I haven't seen the location. So
I know.
honestly
I'm just
can't
trying
visualize.
to explain कि वो ऐसा scene ऐसा scenario है. But जिस तरीके से लाइटिंग की गई है and जिस तरीके से लाइटिंग करी है उसने, so मैं उससे satisfied because that is not giving the mood of the scene. So मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि for the next time, like हम आगे भी काम, like आगे मैं फिल्म्स बनाऊंगा भी, तो उसके लिए भी when I go there, because DOPs जिनके साथ मैं काम करता हूँ, it's very low, it's not a very high budget कि हम लोग high end shooting कर सकें. तो अब DOPs को कितना नॉलेज है कितना नहीं है, I really don't know, because we work for the first time with the DOPs in Delhi. So मेरा खाली पूछना ये है कि हम कैसे उस चीज को अंडरस्टैंड करें कि like that actually solve the purpose of my thought process. Hope you're getting my point.
Yeah. I would also like to ask you a counter question in this case. आपको लाइटिंग पसंद नहीं आई, वो क्यों पसंद नहीं आई, वो आप मुझे बताओगे?
हाँ, because it's very bright and lit up, बहुत ज़्यादा lit up था. There's always मतलब shadows थे, like हमने background में lamp plant रखा था, उसका shadow भी wall पे आ रहा था. And though we used dome diffuser, but still वो cinematic feel नहीं दे रहा था जो frame.
Angad, two things. If you observe any room where there's bright sunlight coming in, there are bound to be shadows, first of all.
जी.
And if it's hard sunlight, then you can't supplement it with soft sources, soft lights.
But when you look at the commercial films, like usually हम जो देखते हैं तो उसमें हम लोग we usually see कि we got a spot of that light and you know वो एक feel देता है.
I completely understand what you're saying, but you also have to see the budgets they're working with, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so you have to be. I hate to say this, but you have to be a bit more realistic in what you want, because what we do, we have a very bad habit of giving references which are unachievable.
Okay.
Low budget में हम Hollywood का reference देते हैं, which we cannot achieve with the budgets that we've got.
Right.
So keep your goals realistic, firstly. Second thing is that if you really want my advice on how to light it, I think use diffusion on the window.
Okay.
पूरा window आप diffuse कर सकते हो. Use white curtains or place a diffusion frame outside the window. Diffusion frames aren't expensive. One diffusion frame will cost you about 500 from a rental house, so you can definitely look into it. And then you can use strong LED sources like an aperture 600D, 600 daylight. Use a couple of them. So what happens, like if you have an overall diffused ambient light from the window, then you can start keying from the inside. There's a saying that light spaces, not faces. So you have to look at the space first and see how everything responds within that space, and then you have to decide what kind of quality of light you're going for.
So second question on that. So हमने सेटअप कर दिया पूरा, आपका आर्ट डायरेक्शन हो चुका है, कैरेक्टर सेटअप हो चुका है. फॉर द लाइटिंग पर्सपेक्टिव आप पहले कैरेक्टर लिट करते हैं या एम्बियंस को आप पहले आप लिट करेंगे? हाउ डू यू लेयर इट द लाइटिंग?
I look at the space first. I generally I have this philosophy of going macro.
Okay.
Most of my approach is looking at the macro level things. Once my space is lit, एक बार मुझे मालूम पड़ गया कि मेरे space में क्या fill levels हैं, then I can start lighting the actors. और एक बार मेरा space जैसे हो गया ना, like if you saw the last frame that I saw, those 3 people sitting together, I didn't even have to use a separate key light. The light which I was using was a Nova 300 bounced off the ceiling, and that was giving me ample light on all the 3 actors' faces as key light. So that's the approach you should be going for. It's a very macro level thing.
Okay.
Watch it from a broad perspective. Once your broad is sorted, then you can be a lot more nuanced. शुरू से ही अगर हम मुझे इस पे ये लाइट चाहिए, इस पे ये लाइट चाहिए कर दे, then we complicate matters a lot. For the DOP, for ourselves, for the actors, that's no fun. मजा नहीं आता.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheers. Upasana,
All right.
let me come back to your question.
So just the last question is Upasana's.
Yeah.
We're running very late for the next session. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry, but the other guest is waiting. So Upasana's question is, you're shooting a documentary. There is a big window, lots of light coming in, white curtains, let's say. Where do you keep your character?
Where do you keep your character? You keep your character keeping in mind where you want to key from, if that makes sense. If you want to use your windows as your key light source, and if you want like a 3/4 key light with some level of shadows on this, you are using natural light. Yeah, of course, you can use natural light. So if you see, if you saw some of my frames, I use natural light entirely. If you want me to go back to my
In
presentation,
fact, her question is reminding me of the last shot that you said that wasn't your best. You know, the old man sitting against the light.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds similar, like a really big window
Yeah,
with
yeah,
lots of
yeah.
light coming in.
The fact that you have a window with white curtains, that really helps you diffuse the light firstly. So you're working with diffused light already. I would sort of go into this kind of placement. Let me share it one more time and I'll show Upasana what I mean. या तो ये कर सकते हैं उपासना, where you see the window as well, or what you can do is not show the window, or go for this, or go for this. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
And Nandit, just to add to that, do you think, like in a situation like with all white, I mean, the character's clothings could be something in control, and would you get into that?
Yes, definitely. I make sure to talk to my actors to ensure what they're wearing complements the set and the walls. Because if I'm shooting in a high key environment with white walls, I wouldn't ask them to wear white or lighter hues. I would ask them to wear solid, darker, solid colors. And it's the reverse. When I'm shooting low key and something which is moody and atmospheric, I would ask them to wear something lighter. For a corporate setup, this is much more important. But for narrative, if the script requires the actor to wear something dark, then so be it.
That's what's the beauty of that particular shot. The senior lady, like the gray, the charcoal gray that she's wearing is,
Yeah.
and the bindi.
Yeah.
That's like little accessorizing, but is just taking it to, and the color of her eye.
Yeah.
It's a very unique green that is, so that's
It stands out. Yeah, it
completely
stands out.
standing
It stands out.
all of that.
Well, I think we've come to the end of the session.
This
So,
is absolutely a full course, Nandit. Thank you very much.
thank
I
you. Thank
think we
you.
all need like a lot of time to process it and go by everything that you've said. I hope everybody. I saw everybody was making fast notes.
Yeah.
So very good, awesome, and just go ahead and practice, guys. You know,
Yeah, just-
which is
just
why
go ahead
I
and
was
shoot.
requesting. Good that Suramoyo got your cinematographer friend here. But that's what I was saying, that like get the people in your team to also talk about, be in those topics, because they'll perceive it very differently, and then having a conversation with them to say that we learned that and we learned that is so much more fun,
Yeah.
to do that. Never mind. Thank you, Nandit.
Thank you. Thank you. And
Sorry
just
this
to
has gone
नहीं,
late,
नहीं, कोई बात नहीं.
delayed.
Very quickly,
Yeah.
just to give you like a perspective of the scale of this workshop, I'm doing this at NID. I'm teaching the bachelor students for 3 weeks. The exact same thing that I taught you. So this is
Yes.
3 weeks of teaching condensed into 90
Yeah.
minutes.
No, absolutely. Because right now, of course, we've rushed it through
Of course,
just
of
to
course.
cover, make sure that at least theoretically you
Definitely.
have everything and then you have a glimpse of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I agreed. I mean, this is like a lot bundled up into it. So, and don't worry if you don't remember everything. It's okay. Like from where it was before we started to whatever little things you get, I would suggest go out and try it and have those things in front of you.
Definitely. Go out and try. And I'm also reachable on social media. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Yeah, we'll share the links. I mean, of course, just by his name, just Nandit Desai.
Yeah, just
Google,
search me on Google and you'll
Google
get it.
for that. Absolutely approachable. Write to him, ask him
Yeah.
questions. Yeah, but I mean, after you've tried it out, that
Yeah.
would be like really nice. That would be really nice for him also to see what you've tried out after all the coaching.
Definitely.
All right,
Right. Thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute
Thank you.
pleasure. Hope to see you guys again soon.
Nandit Malhar is special because you came in. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. Good night.
Okay, so everybody, our next guest is waiting. I have asked her for 5-10 minutes. So quickly take a quick break, and the next link is active. So in that, what we're talking about, they are the producers from US and independent producers. So we are completely only talking about indie filmmaking, and the title, as it says, is do's and don'ts, and we're talking about what they don't teach you at the film school, about location recce's, about permissions, filming, about budgets, about relationships. You know, uh, it's a lot of diverse topics that we're covering about, which is completely from all of us having made some film or the other. I promise you're going to go into so many memories with all of that. So it's going to be very interactive. And it's
Yeah.
two women, they work together. So a lot of things will happen. Yeah. So
Definitely.
quickly, let's just take 5 minutes of break and come to the next leg. I'll be
Sure.
waiting for you guys there.
All
All
right.
right. Take care.
Yeah.
See ya.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
See you. Yeah.
Yeah. Bye.